Welcome to Prayers of the Soul. Subscribe for more powerful biblical stories and comment which one you want us to cover next. Now, let me tell you about a man who had 10 chances to do the right thing. He refused every single one, and it cost him everything. There's a moment when pride stops being strength and becomes destruction. A moment when saying no one more time costs you everything you love. Pharaoh of Egypt reached that moment not once, not twice, 10 times. And each time he chose pride over mercy. Each time he chose power over compassion. Each time he watched his kingdom crumble a little more, and each time he convinced himself he could endure just one more plague. He was wrong. This is the story of 10 warnings, 10 refusals, and one devastating final night that changed history forever. Before we dive in, if you want more biblical stories that reveal the hidden truths and powerful lessons from Scripture, hit that subscribe button and comment which story you want us to cover next. Your support helps us keep bringing these powerful truths to light. Now, let me tell you about the man who had 10 chances to save his nation and refused every single one. Egypt was the most powerful civilization on earth. Its pyramids touched the sky. Its armies were undefeated. Its wealth was legendary. The Nile River, flowing through the desert like a ribbon of life, made Egypt the breadbasket of the ancient world. And at the center of all this power sat Pharaoh. He wasn't just a king, he was considered a living god, the son of Ra, the sun deity. His word was law. His power was absolute. When he spoke, nations trembled. When he commanded, armies marched. And for 400 years, his dynasty had ruled over an empire that seemed eternal. But empires built on the suffering of others are never as stable as they appear. And Pharaoh was about to learn that there is only one true God, and he doesn't share his throne with anyone. 400 years earlier, a Hebrew family had come to Egypt as honored guests. Jacob and his sons had arrived during a terrible famine, invited by Joseph, one of their own, who had risen to become Pharaoh's right-hand man. Joseph had saved Egypt from starvation by interpreting Pharaoh's dreams and storing grain during the years of plenty. Egypt owed its survival to a Hebrew, and for a time the Hebrews were respected, protected, given the best land in Goshen. But generations passed. Joseph died. His deeds were forgotten. A new Pharaoh arose who didn't remember the Hebrew who had saved Egypt. All he saw was a growing population of foreigners living in his land, and he was afraid. Afraid they would become too numerous, afraid they would side with Egypt's enemies in war, afraid they would take over. So he made a decision that would echo through eternity. He enslaved them. For 400 years, the Hebrews suffered. They made bricks without straw. They built cities and monuments for taskmasters who beat them without mercy. They cried out to God, but heaven seemed silent. They watched their baby boys thrown into the Nile River because Pharaoh had ordered every Hebrew male infant killed. The Egyptians treated them worse than animals. They crushed their spirits. They broke their bodies, and they assumed the Hebrews' God had either abandoned them or was too weak to save them. They were wrong on both counts. God had not forgotten his people. He was simply waiting for the right moment, the right man, and the right demonstration of his power that would leave no doubt in anyone's mind who the true God was. That man was Moses. Ironically, he had been saved from Pharaoh's infant massacre by Pharaoh's own daughter. She had found him floating in a basket on the Nile and adopted him. Moses grew up in the palace, educated in all the wisdom and knowledge of Egypt. He had every privilege a prince could want, but he also had a secret burden. He knew he was Hebrew, and one day, when he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, something inside him snapped. He killed the Egyptian. He buried him in the sand, and when word got out, Moses fled for his life. He spent the next 40 years as a shepherd in the wilderness of Midian, 40 years of silence, 40 years of obscurity, 40 years of wondering if God had any purpose for his life. Until one day, on a mountain called Horeb, Moses saw something impossible, a bush that was on fire but didn't burn up. Moses approached, and God spoke from the flames. "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them and bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land flowing with milk and honey. And now, Moses, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt." Moses was terrified. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? I'm nobody. I can't speak well. They won't listen to me. Please send someone else." But God insisted. "I will be with you. Tell Pharaoh this: let my people go so they may worship me. And if he refuses, I will strike Egypt with all the wonders I will perform. After that, he will let you go." So Moses returned to Egypt, not as a fugitive, not as a prince, but as a prophet carrying the word of the living God. He brought his brother Aaron with him to be his spokesman. Together, they went before Pharaoh. Moses delivered God's message. "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says: Let my people go, so they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh looked at them with contempt. "Who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." He didn't just refuse, he made their slavery worse. He ordered the slave masters to stop providing straw for making bricks. Now the Hebrews had to gather their own straw and still meet the same impossible quotas. The workload doubled. The beatings increased. The suffering intensified. The Hebrew foreman came to Moses in anger. "You've made us a stench to Pharaoh. You've put a sword in their hand to kill us. Why did you come here? Things are worse now than before." Moses cried out to God, "Why, Lord? Why did you send me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not rescued your people at all." God's response was firm. "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. Because of my mighty hand, he will let them go. Because of my mighty hand, he will drive them out of his country. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians." What Pharaoh didn't understand, what he couldn't comprehend in his arrogance, was that this confrontation wasn't really about freeing slaves. It was about something far bigger. Egypt worshipped dozens of gods. The Nile was a god. The sun was a god. Frogs, cattle, locusts. Even Pharaoh himself was considered divine. And the God of the Hebrews was about to systematically dismantle every single one of Egypt's deities, to prove beyond any shadow of doubt that he alone was God, that he alone had power over creation, that he alone deserved worship. The plagues weren't random. They were strategic, targeted. Each one aimed directly at a specific Egyptian god. Each one demonstrating that Egypt's gods were powerless, false, useless. And each plague gave Pharaoh another opportunity to humble himself, acknowledge the true God, and obey. But Pharaoh had been raised from birth to believe he was divine, to believe he was the ultimate authority, to believe that no power in heaven or earth could challenge him. So when Moses and Aaron returned to him with their message from God, Pharaoh wasn't afraid. He was insulted. He demanded proof. Show me a miracle. Prove your God has power. Aaron threw down his staff, and it became a serpent. Pharaoh smirked. He called his court magicians, his sorcerers, his wise men. They threw down their staffs, and through their secret arts, their staffs also became serpents. You see, Pharaoh said, your God is nothing special. My magicians can do the same tricks. But then something happened that made the room go silent. Aaron's serpent turned and swallowed every single one of the Egyptian serpents. It consumed them completely. It was a visual prophecy, a warning of what was coming. God's power was about to consume Egypt's power, but Pharaoh's heart was hard. He dismissed Moses and Aaron. He refused to listen. He wouldn't let the people go. And so the plagues began. The first plague came the very next morning. Pharaoh, as he did every day, went down to the Nile River at dawn to perform his religious rituals. The Nile was sacred to Egypt. It was their source of life, irrigation, food, transportation. The Egyptians worshipped Hapi, the god of the Nile, believing the river itself was divine. Moses and Aaron met Pharaoh at the water's edge. Moses raised his staff and spoke with authority. This is what the Lord says, "By this you will know that I am the Lord." And Aaron struck the water with his staff. Instantly, the entire Nile River turned to blood. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, blood. The fish died by the thousands. Their rotting bodies floated to the surface. The water became thick, dark, and reeked of death. No one could drink from the river. The Egyptians had to dig wells along the riverbanks, desperately searching for clean water. But Pharaoh's magicians, using their dark arts, also turned water into blood. And Pharaoh said, "See, this is nothing extraordinary. My magicians can replicate it." He walked back to his palace. He hardened his heart. He refused to let the people go. The blood remained in the Nile for 7 days. 7 days of death. 7 days of stench. 7 days of warning, and Pharaoh did nothing. The second plague came exactly as God had warned. Moses returned to Pharaoh with a simple message: "Let my people go, so they may worship me. If you refuse, I will send a plague of frogs on your whole country." Pharaoh refused, and the next morning, Egypt woke to a nightmare. Frogs came up out of the Nile by the millions. They weren't just near the river. They were everywhere. They covered the roads. They filled the houses. They invaded the bedrooms, hopping onto beds and pillows. They were in the kitchens, in the ovens, in the kneading bowls where bread was made. Everywhere you looked, everywhere you stepped, there were frogs, jumping, croaking, dying in the streets. The stench was unbearable. The Egyptians worshipped Heket, the frog-headed goddess of fertility and childbirth. Frogs were considered sacred, symbols of life and blessing, but now the sacred had become a curse. The blessing had become a plague. You couldn't kill them because they were holy, but you couldn't live with them because they were everywhere. Pharaoh's magicians, using their sorcery, also summoned frogs, which only made the problem catastrophically worse. Now there were even more frogs, but the magicians couldn't make them go away. They could only add to the plague. They had power to mimic, but not power to deliver. Pharaoh, desperate and humiliated, called for Moses. "Pray to the Lord to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let your people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord." Moses, knowing Pharaoh's heart, asked, "When do you want me to pray for you?" And Pharaoh, still clinging to his pride, said, "Tomorrow." Not today, tomorrow. He wanted to prove he could endure one more night. Moses agreed. He prayed to God. And the next day, every frog in Egypt died, all at once. They piled them into massive heaps. The Egyptians gathered them by the cartload. The whole land reeked with the smell of rotting frogs. But as soon as the plague lifted, as soon as Pharaoh could breathe again, he changed his mind. He hardened his heart. He broke his promise. He would not let the people go. The third plague came without warning this time. God was done negotiating. Aaron struck the dust of the ground with his staff, and all throughout Egypt the dust became gnats, tiny, biting insects that swarmed over people and animals. They crawled into eyes, noses, mouths. They covered every surface. You couldn't escape them. You couldn't breathe without inhaling them. The Egyptians worshipped Geb, the god of the earth and dust. They believed the ground itself was sacred and alive with divine power. But now the earth had turned against them. The dust they considered holy was tormenting them. Pharaoh's magicians tried to replicate this plague. They tried to produce gnats through their secret arts, and for the first time, they failed completely. Their power was insufficient. Their magic was useless. They looked at Pharaoh with fear in their eyes and said, "This is the finger of God." Even his own sorcerers, the men who had mimicked the first two plagues, recognized that this was beyond human or demonic power. This was divine. But Pharaoh, stubborn and proud, refused to listen even to his own advisors. His heart remained hard. The fourth plague marked a significant shift. Up until now, the Hebrews had suffered alongside the Egyptians. But God told Moses, "This time I will make a distinction between my people and your people." Moses went to Pharaoh and declared, "Tomorrow the Lord will send swarms of flies on you and your officials and your people and into your houses. But the land of Goshen, where my people live, will be set apart. No swarms of flies will be there. This will be a sign that I, the Lord, am in this land." The next day, thick, vicious swarms of flies descended on Egypt. They filled the palaces and the homes. They ruined the land. The flies were so dense you could barely see, so aggressive they drove people indoors. But in Goshen, where the Hebrews lived, there was not a single fly, not one. The contrast was undeniable, supernatural. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. This was God making a clear statement. These people are mine. I protect what is mine. Pharaoh, shaken by this obvious display of divine favor toward the Hebrews, called Moses. "All right," he said, "go, sacrifice to your God, but do it here in the land of Egypt. Don't leave." Moses refused. "That won't work. The sacrifices we offer to the Lord our God would be detestable to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice animals they consider sacred, they'll stone us. We must take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord our God as he commands us." Pharaoh, seeing he had no leverage, conceded, "Fine, I will let you go to sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, but you must not go very far. Now pray for me." Moses said, "As soon as I leave you, I will pray to the Lord, and tomorrow the flies will leave Pharaoh and his officials and his people. But Pharaoh must stop acting deceitfully by not letting the people go." Moses prayed, and the next day God removed every single fly. Not one remained. And once again, as soon as the crisis passed, Pharaoh hardened his heart. He refused to let the people go. The pattern was clear. Pharaoh would beg for relief. God would grant it, and Pharaoh would go back on his word. The fifth plague targeted Egypt's economy and religious life directly. God sent a devastating plague on the livestock. Horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, sheep, goats. All the animals belonging to the Egyptians began to die. A severe pestilence swept through the land. And once again, God made a distinction. Not a single animal belonging to the Hebrews died. Not one. Pharaoh sent officials to investigate. They returned with confirmation. Every Egyptian animal was dead or dying, but every Hebrew animal was perfectly healthy. This was a direct assault on several Egyptian deities. Apis, the sacred bull god. Hathor, the cow goddess. Khnum, the ram god. These animals weren't just economically valuable, they were worshipped as divine beings. And now the gods of Egypt were lying dead in the fields. The economy was collapsing. The religious system was being exposed as fraudulent, but Pharaoh's heart remained hard. He would not let the people go. The sixth plague was intensely personal and painful. God instructed Moses and Aaron to take handfuls of soot from a furnace. They stood before Pharaoh and threw the soot into the air. It became fine dust that spread over all of Egypt, and wherever the dust touched skin, painful boils erupted, festering sores that covered people and animals. The pain was excruciating. Even Pharaoh's magicians were afflicted. For the first time, they were so covered in boils they couldn't even stand before Moses. They were too sick, too humiliated, too broken to appear in court. This plague targeted Sekhmet, the goddess of healing, and Isis, the goddess of medicine and magic. If Egypt's gods of health and healing couldn't protect against this plague, what good were they? But still, Pharaoh hardened his heart. The pattern continued. No repentance, no humility, no change. The seventh plague was catastrophic. God told Moses to warn Pharaoh, "Tomorrow at this time, I will send the worst hailstorm that has ever fallen on Egypt from the day it was founded until now. Give an order now to bring your livestock and everything you have in the field to a place of shelter. Every person or animal caught in the open when the hail falls will die." Some of Pharaoh's officials, terrified by what they had already witnessed, feared the word of the Lord. They brought their servants and animals indoors. Others ignored the warning and paid the price. The next day, God sent thunder and hail and lightning flashing through the hail. It was the worst storm in Egypt's history. The hail struck down everything in the fields, both people and animals. It beat down every plant and shattered every tree. The crops were destroyed. Barley and flax were ruined. The land looked like a battlefield. But in Goshen, where the Hebrews lived, not a single hailstone fell. The sky was clear. Pharaoh summoned Moses urgently. For the first time, his tone had changed. "I have sinned," he said. "The Lord is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. Pray to the Lord, for we have had enough thunder and hail. I will let you go." You don't have to stay any longer." Moses looked at him and said, "As soon as I have gone out of the city, I will stretch out my hands in prayer to the Lord. The thunder will stop, and there will be no more hail. So you may know that the earth is the Lord's. But I know that you and your officials still do not fear the Lord God." Moses left the city. He prayed, and immediately the thunder stopped. The hail ceased. The rain ended. And as Moses predicted, as soon as Pharaoh saw the storm was over, he sinned again. He and his officials hardened their hearts once more. They refused to let the Israelites go. 7 plagues, 7 warnings, 7 chances to obey, and 7 refusals. The 8th plague came with another warning. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says, 'How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, so they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will bring locusts into your country tomorrow. They will cover the face of the ground so that it cannot be seen. They will devour what little you have left after the hail, including every tree that is growing in your fields. They will fill your houses and those of all your officials and all the Egyptians, something neither your parents nor your ancestors have ever seen from the day they settled in this land till now." Then Moses turned and left Pharaoh's presence. And for the first time, Pharaoh's own officials turned against him. They confronted him directly. "How long will this man be a snare to us? Let the people go so they may worship the Lord their God. Do you not yet realize that Egypt is ruined?" It was a stunning moment. The advisors, the nobles, the officials who had supported Pharaoh's stubbornness were now begging him to surrender. They could see what Pharaoh refused to see. Egypt was being destroyed. The economy was shattered. The people were suffering. The land was devastated, and it was all because of one man's pride. Pharaoh, stung by their rebuke but unwilling to fully yield, called Moses and Aaron back. "Go, worship the Lord your God," he said. "But tell me, who will be going?" Moses answered, "We will go with our young and our old, with our sons and our daughters, and with our flocks and herds, because we are to celebrate a festival to the Lord." Pharaoh's eyes narrowed. "The Lord be with you if I let you go along with your women and children. Clearly you are bent on evil. No, have only the men go and worship the Lord, since that's what you have been asking for." And he drove Moses out of his presence. Pharaoh thought he was being clever. If only the men went, the women and children would remain as hostages, guaranteeing the men's return. But God wasn't negotiating anymore. Moses stretched out his staff over Egypt, and God sent an east wind that blew all that day and all that night. When morning came, the wind had brought the locusts. They invaded all of Egypt. They settled down in every area of the country in great numbers. Never before had there been such a plague of locusts, nor will there ever be again. They covered the ground until it was black. They devoured everything green, every plant, every fruit on the trees, everything the hail had spared. Nothing green remained anywhere in Egypt, not a leaf, not a blade of grass, not a single crop. The entire food supply was gone. Starvation was now inevitable. Pharaoh called Moses urgently. There was desperation in his voice now. "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now forgive my sin once more and pray to the Lord your God to take this deadly plague away from me." Moses went out and prayed to the Lord, and God changed the wind to a very strong west wind that caught up the locusts and carried them into the Red Sea. Not a single locust was left anywhere in Egypt. Complete deliverance, total relief. And once again, the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let the Israelites go. 8 plagues, 8 chances, 8 refusals. And now, Pharaoh was about to face something that would shake him to his core. The 9th plague was darkness, but not the darkness of night. This was something else entirely. Moses stretched out his hand toward the sky, and total darkness covered all Egypt for 3 days. It was a thick darkness, a darkness that could be felt. People couldn't see one another. No one left their place for 3 days. They were trapped in their homes, paralyzed by a supernatural blackness that pressed down on them like a physical weight. It was terrifying, oppressive, suffocating. This was a direct assault on Ra, the sun god, the most powerful deity in all of Egypt. Pharaoh himself was called the son of Ra. The entire religious and political system of Egypt was built on the worship of the sun. And now the sun couldn't shine. Ra, the supreme god, was defeated, powerless, silent. But in the homes of the Hebrews, there was light. They could see. They could move freely. They had light in their dwellings, while Egypt was plunged into supernatural darkness. The message was unmistakable. The God of Israel controlled the sun. He controlled the light. He controlled everything that Egypt worshipped. And he was making it abundantly clear who the real God was. Pharaoh called Moses. His voice was strained, exhausted. "Go, worship the Lord. Even your women and children may go with you. Only leave your flocks and herds behind." Moses looked at him steadily. "No, you must allow us to have sacrifices and burnt offerings to present to the Lord our God. Our livestock, too, must go with us. Not a hoof is to be left behind. We have to use some of them in worshiping the Lord our God, and until we get there, we will not know what we are to use to worship the Lord." Pharaoh exploded. All the pent-up rage, humiliation, and frustration erupted. "Get out of my sight," he screamed. "Make sure you do not appear before me again. The day you see my face, you will die." Moses looked at him calmly and said, "Just as you say. I will never appear before you again." And Moses left Pharaoh's presence for the last time. 9 plagues, 9 warnings, 9 opportunities to humble himself and obey. And Pharaoh had refused every single one. But now, one final plague was coming, the most terrible of all. And this one wouldn't just destroy livestock or crops. This one would break Egypt completely. This one would pierce the heart of every household in the nation. God told Moses what was coming. "About midnight, I will go throughout Egypt. Every firstborn son in Egypt will die, from the firstborn son of Pharaoh, who sits on the throne, to the firstborn son of the female slave who is at her hand mill, and all the firstborn of the cattle as well. There will be loud wailing throughout Egypt, worse than there has ever been or ever will be again. But among the Israelites, not a dog will bark at any person or animal. Then you will know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel." This wasn't just another plague. This was judgment. Final, devastating, personal. Moses delivered the message to Pharaoh, but Pharaoh had already dismissed him. He refused to listen. He would not let the people go. God gave the Israelites specific instructions for that night. Each family was to take a year-old lamb without defect. They were to slaughter it at twilight. Then they were to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of their houses. The blood would be a sign. When the Lord went through Egypt to strike down the firstborn, he would see the blood and pass over that house. The blood would protect them, save them. They were also to roast the lamb and eat it that night with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. They were to eat it in haste, dressed and ready to leave. This was the first Passover, a night that would be remembered and celebrated for thousands of years, a night when the blood of a lamb stood between life and death. That night, Egypt learned what it meant to defy the living God. At midnight, the Lord struck down every firstborn in Egypt. From the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on the throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all the livestock. Pharaoh woke in the middle of the night to a sound he had never heard before, a wail, a scream, a cry of anguish that rose from every household in Egypt. His officials burst into his chamber weeping. His servants were hysterical. And then Pharaoh learned why. His own firstborn son, his heir, the future of his dynasty, was dead, gone, in an instant, without warning, without chance to say goodbye. The prince who would have ruled Egypt was lying cold and lifeless. And Pharaoh, the man who thought he was a god, could do nothing to bring him back. He stumbled through the palace. Everywhere he looked, there was mourning. Every household had lost their firstborn. The officials, the servants, the guards, the cooks, every single family was grieving. The wailing was unbearable. It was the sound of a nation breaking, the sound of judgment falling, the sound of pride finally, devastatingly being crushed. And in that moment, Pharaoh realized what he had done. His refusal to listen had cost him his son. His stubbornness had destroyed his nation. His pride had brought Egypt to its knees, and it was too late to undo any of it. 10 chances, 10 opportunities to obey, 10 warnings that he ignored, and now he had lost everything. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron in the middle of the night. His voice was no longer defiant. It was broken, desperate, pleading. "Up! Leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds, as you have said, and go. And also bless me." For the first time, Pharaoh wasn't commanding. He was begging for a blessing from the God he had mocked, begging for mercy from the people he had enslaved. The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for otherwise, they said, we will all die. They were terrified, convinced that if the Hebrews stayed any longer, more plagues would come, more death, more devastation. So the Egyptians gave the Israelites articles of silver and gold and clothing, anything to make them leave, anything to end the nightmare. The Israelites left Egypt that night, 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Possibly 2 million people in total. They left so quickly that their bread dough didn't have time to rise. They carried it on their shoulders in kneading troughs wrapped in clothing. They took their flocks and herds, their possessions, everything they owned, and they walked out of Egypt as free people. After 430 years of slavery, they were finally leaving, not as refugees sneaking away in shame, but as a nation walking out in victory, carrying the wealth of Egypt with them. The Exodus had begun, and it happened in one night, one devastating, unforgettable night when God proved beyond any doubt that He alone was God. But the story doesn't end there, because Pharaoh's heart, even after losing his son, even after watching his nation collapse, wasn't fully changed. A few days after the Israelites left, after the initial shock and grief began to wear off, Pharaoh started to regret his decision. "What have we done?" he asked his officials. "We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services." His pride returned, his stubbornness resurfaced, and he made one final fatal decision. He would go after them. He gathered his army, 600 of his best chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. He mobilized whatever military strength Egypt had left, and he pursued the Israelites with his entire force. The Egyptians caught up with the Israelites at the Red Sea. The people of Israel looked up and saw the Egyptian army coming. Mountains trapped them on both sides. The sea blocked their path forward. The army closed in from behind. There was no escape. The people panicked. They cried out to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Fear overwhelmed them. They had seen 10 plagues. They had witnessed the death of Egypt's firstborn. They had walked out of slavery into freedom. And now, at the first sign of danger, they wanted to go back. But Moses stood firm. "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then God told Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground." And Moses obeyed. He stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters divided. A wall of water stood on their right. A wall of water stood on their left. And in between, a path of dry ground stretched across the sea floor. The Israelites walked through. 2 million people crossing the sea on dry land. It was a miracle beyond comprehension. The water, held back by the power of God, towered above them, but they walked through safely. Every man, woman, child, and animal made it to the other side. The Egyptians, seeing the path, pursued them into the sea. Pharaoh's chariots and horsemen followed the Israelites right into the middle of the sea. But during the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving. The Egyptians panicked. "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." But it was too late. God told Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. At daybreak, the sea returned to its place. The Egyptians tried to flee from it, but the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. The most powerful military force in the world, the army that had conquered nations, was destroyed in minutes, swallowed by the sea. And the Israelites, standing on the far shore, saw the bodies of their enemies washed up on the beach, the people who had enslaved them for 400 years, the soldiers who had beaten them, oppressed them, murdered their children. They were all gone. Pharaoh, the man who had 10 chances to obey, was finally defeated. Whether he died in the sea or returned to Egypt broken and humiliated, the Bible doesn't say. But his power was shattered. His army was destroyed. His firstborn son was dead. His nation was ruined, and it all could have been avoided if he had just listened, if he had just humbled himself, if he had just let God's people go after the first plague. But pride is a terrible thing. It blinds us to truth. It convinces us we can endure just one more consequence. It makes us believe we're in control when we're actually heading toward destruction. And Pharaoh's pride cost him everything. The Israelites sang a song of victory that day. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. It was a song of deliverance, of freedom, of recognizing that God had fought for them when they couldn't fight for themselves. And it's a song that echoes through history, reminding us that God hears the cries of the oppressed, sees injustice, and acts in his perfect timing. So what do we learn from the 10 plagues? What is this story really about? First, it's about the danger of hardening your heart. Pharaoh had 10 opportunities to change, 10 warnings, 10 moments when he could have humbled himself and obeyed. But each time he refused, his heart grew harder. Each time he said no, it became easier to say no again. And eventually, his heart was so hard that even the death of his own son couldn't fully change him. That's what happens when we repeatedly ignore God's voice. When we continually refuse to listen, our hearts become calloused, desensitized, and we lose the ability to respond to truth. The Bible warns us, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts, because a hard heart leads to destruction. Second, the plagues teach us that God is patient, but his patience has limits. God gave Pharaoh chance after chance. He sent warnings. He demonstrated his power. He gave time for repentance. But Pharaoh refused every opportunity, and eventually judgment came. God's patience is incredible. He is slow to anger and rich in love. But he will not allow rebellion to continue indefinitely. There comes a point when his justice demands action. And when that moment comes, it's devastating. Third, the plagues reveal that God makes a distinction between his people and those who oppose him. Starting with the 4th plague, God protected the Israelites while Egypt suffered. No flies in Goshen, no dead livestock for the Hebrews, no boils, no hail, no locusts, no darkness, and no death for the firstborn where the blood was applied. God protected what was his, and that protection continues today for those who belong to him. Fourth, the story shows us that God is more powerful than anything we worship. Egypt worshipped the Nile, frogs, the earth, the sun, cattle, and even Pharaoh himself. And God systematically dismantled every one of those false gods. He proved they were powerless, useless, incapable of protecting their worshipers. And the same is true today. Whatever we put our trust in, whether it's money, power, success, or ourselves, will eventually fail us. Only God is worthy of our worship. Only he has the power to save. Fifth, the blood of the Lamb foreshadows the ultimate sacrifice. On the night of the 10th plague, The blood of a spotless lamb painted on the door frames saved the Israelites from death. That blood was a sign, a covering, a protection, and it points forward to another lamb, the Lamb of God, Jesus Christ, who shed his blood on the cross to save us from the ultimate plague, the plague of sin and death. Just as the Israelites had to trust that the blood would protect them, we have to trust that Jesus' blood covers us. Just as they had to apply the blood to their door frames, we have to accept by faith what Jesus did for us. And just as the blood saved them from physical death, Jesus' blood saves us from eternal separation from God. The story of the Exodus isn't just ancient history, it's a picture of redemption, of God rescuing his people from bondage, of God judging sin, of God making a way where there was no way, and of God inviting us to trust him even when circumstances seem impossible. If this story impacted you, if it made you think about the areas of your life where you've been hardening your heart, ignoring God's warnings, or refusing to let go of pride, then take a moment right now to respond. Subscribe to this channel for more powerful biblical truths. Comment below and tell us which story you want us to cover next. And most importantly, don't be like Pharaoh. Don't wait until you've lost everything to finally listen to God. He's speaking, he's warning, he's offering you a chance to change. Take it before it's too late, because the God who parted the Red Sea is the same God who's calling you today. And he still has the power to set you free.